They said none of the graves were his, but he showed up every week, same time, same path. His coat faded, his military backpack stitched and restitched as if it had been to hell and back. He walked like a man still under command, measured, silent. His boots never crunched leaves. They stepped around them. Some thought he was looking for someone. Others believed he was remembering everyone. The rain never touched him. It was as if even the weather understood. This man had seen storms we'd never imagine. Each week, he chose a different grave. Never the same name twice. He'd set down his bag with a care that resembled ritual, buttoned his coat, adjusted his collar, sat down. Sometimes he'd just sit there, watching, listening, not to the world, but to the silence underneath it. He never prayed, never spoke, but the way he placed his hand on the stone, gently, deliberately, was more sacred than a sermon. He wasn't mourning. He was apologizing. Inside that weathered backpack wasn't much, but what it held mattered. A black notebook, a folded flag, a rusted bullet casing, and an old map. Creases so deep, the countries nearly vanished. Every item told a story, stories he would never speak aloud, but each week he rearranged them, as if trying to rewrite something or undo it. One time, a child passed by and asked what was in the bag. He looked up, smiled just once, and said, "Memory weighs more than gear." There were rows of graves without names, only numbers, or sometimes nothing at all. That's where he lingered the longest. He'd kneel, pull something from his pocket, a note, a pin, a piece of cloth, and leave it there. Sometimes he'd trace the stone with his fingers, like trying to summon the name that should have been carved. Other times he'd stare into the soil as if it might speak back. He gave faces to the forgotten, stories to the stones. The groundskeepers noticed him, cameras too, but no one approached. He wasn't a threat, just a man who moved like he still had orders to follow. Sometimes he'd stand at the same tree, eyes scanning like he was on overwatch. They said soldiers watched with their whole body, back straight, hands still, eyes everywhere. That was him, watching, not the living, but the spaces between the stones. The groundskeepers noticed him, cameras too, but no one approached. He wasn't a threat, just a man who moved like he still had orders to follow. Sometimes he'd stand at the same tree, eyes scanning like he was on overwatch. They said soldiers watched with their whole body, back straight, hands still, eyes everywhere. That was him, watching, not the living, but the spaces between the stones. Maybe he was waiting for someone to come back, or maybe waiting to be taken. No one knew when he wrote in it, but the notebook grew thicker. The pages weren't dated, just filled with lines that cut like shrapnel. They were boys. We turned them into weapons. A trigger doesn't cry. I did. He never read them aloud. But one page, torn and refolded, was different. It read, "If I disappear, tell them I stayed. I stayed, even after it all. No one had ever heard his voice, until one day, an old woman sat beside him. Said nothing, just sat. After a long silence, he said, he called for his mother. He was 17. They said, don't stop, but I did. The woman nodded, placed her hand on his, didn't ask more. They sat until sunset. Then he left a medal on a grave and walked away slower than usual. There were 3 graves he always avoided, side by side, no flowers, no flags. One day, he stood before them. His hands trembled. His lips moved, but no sound came. He placed something small on each stone, a photo, a lighter, a dog tag. Then he saluted, not sharp, not proper, but heartfelt. As he turned away, he whispered, "Brothers, I shouldn't have come home without you." Sometimes, when no one was near, he'd pull out blank pages. He'd write, not full sentences, just words. Guilt, orders, night 14, civilians. Once he wrote, God saw it, but he didn't stop it. So why should I pray now? He'd crumple the pages and place them under random stones, like planting truth where only silence grew. He was strong. Even in stillness he carried weight. But one morning he sat longer than usual, shoulders low, eyes dim. He pulled his hood over his face, covered his ears, like trying to shut out ghosts. A tear escaped. Just one. But when it hit the soil, the wind changed, as if the ground finally recognized the burden it had buried. Tucked inside his coat was a letter. Old, faded, creased from being opened and folded too many times. The envelope had no address, no name, just a date, March 14. Sometimes he'd pull it out, read it silently, then tuck it back without a word. One page, dozens of rewrites, but he never mailed it. Some said it was for a mother, others for a brother, but no one knew the truth, except the soil beneath him. There was one bench near the back of the cemetery, cracked wood, rusted bolts. He always ended his route there, sat alone, never ate, never drank, just sat. Sometimes his lips moved, not in prayer, but like a man rehearsing a speech no one would ever hear. The trees around him knew his weight. The birds didn't fear him. It was the only place he didn't scan. As if, on that bench, he finally allowed himself to be still. Among his items, the map stood out. Old, yellowing, dotted with faded red ink. He'd open it slowly, trace lines with his fingers, then fold it again without a word. One observer once caught a glimpse. It wasn't a world map. It was a battlefield, with handwritten notes like, "Too late here, no way out," echoes in the rubble. It wasn't a map to find a place. It was a map to never return to. Only once did someone see him laugh. A little girl tripped near a puddle. Her brother caught her just in time. She giggled wildly. He watched. For a moment, his face softened. A breath escaped, almost a laugh. But then his eyes changed, and the smile died. Like he remembered something that didn't deserve joy. He stood up and left, faster than usual. On one occasion, he took out a small pocket watch. It was cracked. The hands didn't move, but he wound it anyway, like keeping time alive in his mind. He placed it on a stone, stared for minutes, then picked it up again. Some believed it stopped the moment someone important to him died. Others believed it never worked, but carried a heartbeat he could still feel. Folded in his wallet was a photo, creased so many times the image was nearly gone. Just 2 figures, one smiling, one saluting. Every now and then he'd take it out, look, touch it, then hide it again like a secret too precious to be seen. The man beside him in the photo wore the same patch he did, but in the photo, only one of them had eyes filled with hope. The other had already seen too much. His boots told stories, scuffed soles, stained laces, mismatched eyelets. They weren't just worn, they were tired. Each step echoed across the grave paths like whispers of a forgotten squad. Once, a soldier visiting the cemetery said, "Those boots saw more than mine ever will." And the man just nodded, because he knew it was true. He always checked the sky, every visit. The day the clouds gathered, he didn't flinch. Instead, he stood taller. As the rain fell, he removed his hood, letting it wash over him like penance. He whispered something that no one caught. A name, maybe. Some thought he waited for the storm to clean what memories couldn't. One evening, a shadow followed him. Not a person, just the feeling of being watched. He turned twice. No one. Then he spoke to the air. "You're late." Whether it was a hallucination, a memory, or a ghost, no one knew. But he smiled briefly, like seeing an old friend arrive late to roll call. That day, he emptied his bag. Laid out each item like a ritual: notebook, medal, photo, bullet, watch. One by one, he placed them under different stones, quietly, precisely. When he walked away, the bag hung flat, lifeless. Some say that was the day he finally let go. Others say he was just making room for more ghosts. In a distant corner of the cemetery stood a monument, tall, nameless, untouched. He visited it only once a month, always at sunset. He would stand before it, never sitting, never speaking. Some believed it was the place where his war ended. Others thought it marked something worse, where it never did. No plaque, no flowers, just silence. And yet it carried more weight than any grave. He began to arrive earlier and stay later. Sometimes he'd walk without stopping, just tracing invisible patterns between the graves. People started whispering, "He's looking for someone who hasn't died yet." But he wasn't searching. He was rehearsing. Each step, a memory. Each pause, a name forgotten by time but not by him. A child once asked him if he was a ghost. He knelt down and whispered, "No, but I knew a few." That night, thunder cracked as he sat under the tree. The wind howled through the stones like a call to arms. He didn't flinch. He listened, not to the storm, but to the voices only he could hear. One afternoon, he placed an envelope on a headstone. It wasn't sealed, but he didn't open it either. Written on the back, "For the one who kept me human." He sat beside it for an hour, staring at the clouds. Then he left. The letter stayed, and the wind carried it somewhere deeper than earth. He wore no uniform, no insignia, but every motion, every breath, still echoed military rhythm. A priest once approached, mistaking him for a veteran visiting friends. He simply replied, "I'm not a soldier. I'm what's left when one forgets how to be." That was the only time he smiled without sadness. One day, he didn't arrive. Then another. A week passed. The groundskeeper grew worried. Then, on a foggy morning, they found his bag under a tree. Inside, a note. "I visited them all. It's my turn now." No name, no body. Just wind and fog, settling in where he used to sit. The cemetery felt emptier, not because someone had died, but because someone had remembered too much. After he vanished, children claimed to hear whispers near the nameless graves, soft voices like someone reading letters aloud in the wind. Others said they saw footprints appear beside stones without a soul in sight. Whether ghost or memory, he hadn't left. He had just changed form. The tree he sat beneath began to bloom out of season. Flowers not native to the region grew around its base. People left small objects there, badges, ribbons, coins. No signs, no explanation, just instinct. Something about that place made people want to remember, even if they didn't know who. Weeks later, someone discovered a page tucked inside the folds of the old bench. Just one sentence. If silence could speak, it would tell my whole story. The ink was fresh, but the handwriting matched no records. That page is now framed in the cemetery office, but no one knows who placed it there, or why it still smells faintly of gunpowder and pine. His story never ended. It just stopped being told aloud. But in the rustling leaves, the shifting stones, and the unexpected breeze, his presence lingers. He wasn't just a man who returned each week. He was a question unanswered. Behind those eyes, what did he see? What did he carry? And more importantly, what did he leave behind in us? Weeks after his disappearance, a man arrived at the cemetery. Younger, different build, but something familiar in the way he moved. He sat under the same tree, pulled out a blank notebook, began to write. Not a copy, a continuation. It was clear. The legacy hadn't vanished. It had simply passed on. The groundskeeper, who had watched him for years, finally spoke. He never asked for anything, but he gave that place a heartbeat. He cleaned the bench more often now, left wildflowers where the man used to sit. He didn't know the full story, but he knew this: grief can be quiet and still change everything. A woman reported dreaming of a man in a field of unmarked graves. He was guiding lost souls, placing tags on their chests, whispering names they had forgotten. She had never met him, but when shown a photo left behind in the bag, she pointed and said, "That's him, the one who told me my brother's name." One stormy evening, a medal appeared on a headstone, shining, clean. No one saw who placed it, but the stone belonged to a man who had died alone. No visitors, no family. Now, people pause longer at that grave. The medal catches the sun and whispers something like, "Honor." The benchwood had warped from weather, but carved into the side remained a single word: stay. Some say it was for himself. Others, a plea to those who visit. No matter how you read it, it felt alive. A message not from the past, but to the present. They say, on foggy mornings, you can see the shape of a man near the unmarked graves. Not walking, standing, as if on guard. His form is blurred, his face unreadable. But those who see him always say the same thing. He wasn't lost. He was watching. A local school brought children to learn about remembrance. They left drawings, small flags, words like, "Thank you," and "Never forgotten." One child left a crayon sketch of a man under a tree with a bag beside him. She said, "He told me to draw this in my dream." The teacher cried quietly. A second notebook was discovered under the bench. Only one page had writing. "If you're reading this, it means someone stayed. Below that, coordinates. They pointed not to a grave, but to a hill overlooking the cemetery. There, a single stone. No name, but a view of every soul he remembered. The tree began to creak at night, even without wind. Some claimed it whispered names. Some said it breathed. Whatever the truth, people now pause there, touch its bark, and close their eyes. Like listening to something they can't explain, but understand anyway. This was never about one man. It was about what we carry, what we bury, and what we dare to remember. Behind the eyes isn't just pain. It's proof we lived. We served. We loved. We lost. Some names are forgotten. Some stories never told. But as long as we listen, none of it is truly gone. If this story moved you, you're not alone. There are many more tales hidden behind quiet eyes, waiting to be told. So if you believe in stories that deserve to be remembered, subscribe, leave a comment, and stay with us. This is only the beginning. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care of the stories behind your own eyes.